And we are live. Welcome, friends, to the Collectors Showcase. The Collectors, this is where the collectors live. I'm DPZ. You can find me at PC with DPZ. And I am with the Sportscard dad himself, Dustin. Dustin, thanks for joining us today on the Luca Nation Network.
Absolutely. DPZ, thanks for having me, man. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, no, it'll be a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. You've got a really good channel, a fun channel, and I've been following it for a while. I know a lot of people follow because you got a terrific following. Very positive, very authentic, good stuff. You got some amazing paintings behind you of cards, which are pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff to unpack here. But the reason we talk to everybody on the point of this show is we want to talk about collections, and the collections are very different. Everybody has a different kind of focus and different kind of collectible that they enjoy. And it's not just cards, it's collectibles. Collectibles can be a lot of different things. And I think you represent a very wide array of that. You have quite the collectible collection. So I'm looking forward to learning more about all those. Before we get into all that, the first thing I want to ask you is, I just want to learn a little bit more about you and let our audience learn a little bit more about you. Those that don't know who you are, you have a YouTube channel. Maybe tell us a little bit about that YouTube channel and how you came back into the hobby and what's your origin story. Where did you come from? Do you collect when you were a kid? Kind of, bring us up to speed with where we're at today.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, as I said, thank you very much for having me. I always like doing these sorts of things. It's really fun. And like you said, I mean, we're talking about all the fun stuff. So I could talk for hours about it. But yeah, for me, I was born in 81. So I'm 41. My wife and I kind of joke about me getting back into this hobby has kind of been like my midlife crisis. And that's how I've dealt with it. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the 80s, 90s nostalgia stuff that you and I both have in common. And so I collected cards as a kid. It probably started in 87, I would say, 87, 88. And then 89 was when it kind of shifted to where I was collecting Donruss baseball cards, grabbing packs at the local gas station with RC Cola and Moon Pies and that sort of stuff, Big League Chew with my buddies. But then in 1989, we had 89 Pro Set and 89 Score, and we had amazing rookie class with Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas, just Troy Aikman. All these guys are coming out. 1990, we had Emmitt Smith. So you kind of have this golden era of football cards that I'm a huge New Orleans Saints fan. My dad cursed me with that fandom back in the 80s. It's been a rough go this season, but we had some good years. And so just being a huge football fan and watching those games on TV with him, that was kind of a connecting point. And so started into football cards. And also some basketball. I can remember back in that time, David Robinson, the Admirals rookie cards, where everybody wanted those. There was card shows that were in the mall, which a lot of people are like, wait, shopping malls? What is that? Everyone just orders off of Amazon now, and a drone just drops your package at the front door or whatever. So that's kind of my upbringing was like a lot of people my age. It was cards, and that was really a big part of what everybody did. I mean, it was way more mainstream. If you go back to 88 to 92, 93, 94, kind of when I was into it. Shaq was a rookie in 92, Larry Johnson, 91. So I was big into it. It's weird how like a 4 or 5 year span of time really I didn't realize how big of a part of me that was, along with a lot of the other collectibles that we can talk about. But now as an adult, as we talk about, we're hitting kind of the middle years, if you will, and we're looking back on those good times, it's that's what kind of brought me back in. So that was beginning of 2018 is when I got back into everything. And I got back into actually graded comic books as well as cards. I didn't understand graded cards. I remember seeing them on eBay and thinking like, what is like the plastic around it? Like, I didn't understand. And then I saw Beckett. So I'm like, okay, BVG with, Beckett Vintage, which you find out later, like, actually they were grading those a little bit too easy, so don't get the BBGs. But I saw Beckett as a grading company. I'm like, that's obviously the one that I want, because I had Beckett magazines when I was a kid. And then finally learned about kind of PSA, what they're about, SGC, what they're about. So that was a whole learning thing for me was, wait, all these things are graded now, numbered 1 to 10. What does it all mean? So it took a while to just kind of get a hold of what that was, but it made it fun. Obviously, that kind of adds another dimension, to the whole thing. So got back in 2018, graded comic books, graded cards. And then it kind of evolved to where I think with a lot of people, pandemic hits. And actually, if we go back to summer of 2019, Jeff Wilson had started his channel. And that was probably my first foray into sports card content on YouTube. I'd never used YouTube for anything else. I was watching like Gary V on YouTube, just some random things. Later found out that Gary V was also into cards, but that's not, I was already into it. And then found out later, like, oh, it turns out this motivational speaker, Gary V guy, also likes cards. So I'm listening to people talk about it. And I remember watching Jeff Wilson's first episodes and thinking, like, I like how that was presented. That was kind of a cool way that he did that. And I thought, man, I could probably do something like that. And this is, of course, like July of 19. I ended up starting my channel in March of 2020. And it was kind of when the pandemic really started to take hold. And we were at home. And it was kind of like, I keep talking about it. I've been talking about it for a few months with my wife. It was like, when am I ever going to, like, now is the time. Like, now is the, just turn on the camera and just, throw it out there and see what happens, figure it out. And so March of 2020, that's when I, first started YouTube. And it was really just kind of an extension of my hobby experience. I wanted to see also just kind of from, personally, is this something I could be good at? Is it something that could be popular? Do I know what I'm talking about? Maybe I'll get some feedback that's like, hey, you don't know anything. Or it's like, hey, I actually like what you're doing. But either way, I thought it would be cool to just kind of bond with like-minded people. And just during the pandemic, I was stuck in my house for a year, and it's like, you're not going out and bonding with people. So this was an opportunity to do that. And it's just kind of snowballed from there, and, made a bunch of great friends along the way that otherwise would never have met if I wasn't doing YouTube. So that's kind of where and then here we are. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, it's real interesting. You talk about the hobby community. I think that is something it's almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than some of the collectibles that we possess. Like it's the relationships you continue to forge and make of like-minded people, and you develop these relationships, and it's just, it's a real gift, I believe. I think it not only coming through the pandemic, but coming out of it, we have like this little subculture of the hobby and all of our friends that are on the internet for the most part. And when we get together at the national or different shows or on shows like this, it feels like we're just hanging out and having a cup of coffee together or having a beer or whatever it may be, and just talking about sports cards, collectibles. Some of us in our age group, we're like literally the same age. We get all excited about toys and the video games and just all the same stuff. Like you talk about Donruss. I mean, that's what we were doing. Big League Chew and Donruss. I mean, you're in the South, so you get the moon pies. I mean, I was not getting, just going to the store and picking up 89 Donruss and 88 Donruss, Greg Jeffries chasing and all that stuff. I mean, and then the 89 score, that football set was, what an amazing set that was. I just picked up an 89 score supplemental, Bo Jackson, the classic one, the purple one where he's got the bat and everything.
Oh yeah.
Talk to me about 89. So your channel takes off. So I won't dive into 89 score just yet. Your channel takes off. And what did you realize? What did you recognize as your channel's kind of growing? You're becoming something. We're almost turning this into an interview for you, which is fine. I don't think you've been on Luca Nation yet, so this can kind of take the place for that. Talk to me about the channel and how it continued to grow, and what did you notice? Like, you obviously have a lot of followers. You've done really, really well, which has been great. You're not a pumper. I debate whether you're an influencer. You're just kind of talking about cards in a very generic way and having fun with it. So talk to me more about how the channel grew and what happened as you started doing this.
So I think what probably happens with a lot of content creators is you have different ideas that you're thinking about as you're looking at cards on eBay, or as you're, looking at card news or whatever. And you're like, man, there's a topic that you think about and it's like, I could talk about, just like throw this out into the universe. My channel, really the bread and butter, is 7 to 12-minute videos. And so some people are like, you don't go into enough detail, and it's like, but that's not really what my shtick is. My shtick is more along, here's a hobby topic that I think is interesting. I kind of lay out a little bit of the backstory of it. I throw in kind of my 2 cents. And then at the end, it's, what do you guys think? And then we kind of open up that conversation. And then sometimes that carries over to other channels. Other hobby people will be talking about a similar topic. And sometimes I take topics that I see other people talking about. And that's just kind of part of the, I think that's fun because I can throw in my 2 cents. I can throw in, we've talked about like dumb Skeletor clips and funny, like, Nintendo clips or whatever. I can kind of put my own spin on it, put it out there. And I'm really just trying to kind of entertain with it's like, it's what do they say? It's information, entertainment, but you mix it together, information or whatever. But I never wanted my channel to be taken very seriously. So I never wanted to come across as, hi, welcome. I'm your card expert, and I'm here to tell you how to do cards. I never wanted to do that. And it was just more of like, it's just documenting my journey. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? That's just really what it is. And then I think that one thing that I kept on reading, whether or not it was like a card channel or any channel, it was be consistent with your content. So if I look at my first year on YouTube, I did more than one video a day. I think I probably did, 400 videos. And that also includes live streams, that I might've done with other people, but 400 pieces of content on YouTube in that first 12 months. And I think that part of the reason why I did that was because each day you could see the progression. You could see like, okay, I picked up 8 subscribers today. And then it's like, okay, I picked up 5 more. Some people will just do like 3 videos a week, or they'll do once a week, and they do great doing that. I've done way more videos than Jeff Wilson, but he's doing high production, like he's got much more going on to where he's still getting a higher viewership. But for me, I was never going to be the guy that's got 10 people on a team that's following me around a card show. I'm not going to have a 6-figure budget into this thing, so it was kind of more of like, I'm going to be that guy that puts out almost like a news. Here's your 10 minutes of card topic news today, or just ideas about the hobby. And that's me. And I've also, I've done some vlog type stuff, but I just try to have fun with it. I'll be at a card show and my buddy, it's always got to be fun, so if it ever becomes a chore, then to me, it's like, then I don't want to do it. And it never is. I really enjoy making the content. And so, and a lot of times I'll show my kids, I'm like, I'm going to put this clip in, and they're like laughing, they're like, oh man, I love that, or I surprise them with something. And so there's a family piece of that as well, to where, or they're like, Dad, that is so dumb. Like I'll do something, I'll film it, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so embarrassing. But that's part of that, that whole story. And they do, because how it goes. Young people are obsessed with social media. So there is a level of coolness that comes with having a little bit of a YouTube following, and so it's like, yeah, Dad's on YouTube and he actually has, like a lot of subscribers, so like as a 41-year-old, your kids usually think you're just old and dumb. So this is an opportunity to kind of have a cool.
Dustin the dad is cool. I'm cool. Look at me, kids. I'm cool.
Yeah. See, I can do this social media thing.
I can do this whole thing. No, it's true. It's true. I think it's you're not self-deprecating at all. I think you definitely have an interesting vibe, and it's not, you don't take yourself too seriously, but you're also very, like I said earlier, you're authentic and genuine, and it comes across when you can tell someone's listening. I've listened to your show before, and talking to you now, you're just the same guy. You're the same guy on the show. You're the same guy right now. You're the same guy before when we're talking on the show. You're just the same guy. And I think that, and you talk about consistency, I think that's important in life. I think it's important within the hobby community. When you're dealing with people, you need to be who you are. You've got to be consistently who you are. I think it's important because what it does is you're going to build great relationships with people, because you're going to know what to expect. They're going to know what to expect. And I think those are where you find the great friendships in this hobby, is like you get to know some good people that are out there. And, a lot of us are surrounded by maybe a lot of negative people, whether it be just, on the internet or social media, Twitter. There's a very, divisive social climate out there right now. And so the hobby community is kind of nice, sort of insulates you from that. And you get to meet other people that are like-minded, that are nice, that you can go, hey, you may not even know their political views, but it won't matter, because you have this really awesome foundation you've built. And then people get to know one another. And I think psychologically, it helps people going, I'm not alone. I collect cards. I love doing it. I listen to content. There's these really nice people out there that they don't think they're too big for the britches. I'll be honest. I've just jumped into this game, and I've been observing content for a few years now. And everybody has been like, oh yeah, sure, I'll jump on. No big deal. No one needed all this credibility. No one needed vetting. None of that. Like, oh, that sounds fine. I mean, it was just, this person can't, I don't feel like I'm some schlub out there going, hey, I'm a professional person, but I still think the community is very open and welcoming, and nobody thinks they're too big for anyone. Everybody's been on everybody's show, it seems like. So it's not, You know, there's no the barrier is not as difficult as people might think to enter. But you're right. To do this, to be on, there's a consistency that needs to be there. And it needs to be taken seriously. And those that continue going and keep doing it, people will see that. They'll be able to count on them. They can count on you for those little videos. Those are great.
Yeah. And for me, I can't imagine if it was, you know, if it was heavy informational, educational, where it was a 30-minute video, could never do it every day unless that was my job, you know, to just do that. So, you know, I know, you know, there's certain folks that they're more looking for like informational / educational. And for me, I'm a newbie to them. Maybe they've been in the hobby for 20 years or 30 years. They're like, what does this guy know? But I'm not necessarily here to teach you anything, maybe little nuggets, maybe a little nugget. I'm just here to, you know, give you a little nugget of something and entertain you for 7 minutes a day or, you know, or whatever. That's it.
Yeah. People can go online and find information if they want to learn. I think a lot of times people just want to hear other people's opinions on this, that, or the other thing. Because at the end of the day, we're all buying these things and we're like, well, am I the only one buying it? Am I the only one that cares about it? It's neat. And it's exciting to find someone else, to learn there's someone else out there that enjoys the same things as you do. So now that we've talked about that, your channel's doing really well and you're learning, you're gaining friends, you're having fun. You've got your niche that you've covered and you represent. You collect cards too, though, right? Obviously, you collect not just cards, you collect comic books, action figures, all these really cool things. I'm an action figure guy. I love the starting lineup toys as of recent. Talk to me about your collection, your PC. What is it focused around, or is it just this big old thing?
Yeah. So, and it's evolved. It really has evolved since 2018. I think too, when you first get into this or you're getting back into it, it takes a good little bit to figure out what do you really, really like? Because you'll get stuff that you like, oh man, I really like this for the moment. You know, it's like, and then 3 months later, you're like, man, I like this better. So maybe I need to get rid of this, or I need to, you know, I'm not as interested into this. So I want to get into that. And for me, there was definitely a lot of that happening. And I would say the first couple of years, I've settled in nicely over the last couple of years, I would say, as far as kind of my niche. I collect a lot of autograph cards, not necessarily patch autographs, but I've got a few just on my desk. I can just throw them up. Do you want me to share?
Sure, absolutely.
I'll just kind of go through a variety of things if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like huge Saints fan. So Archie Manning, it's a patch auto. And again, really these aren't like, you know, 6-figure cards or anything, but
doesn't matter.
So Breeze, Colston, and then you've got Exquisite. It's the quad. So it's got 4 Saints on it with the patch auto. I really like the kind of the legend Hall of Famers. So, and football cards, you know, we talked about that as kind of being, honestly, basketball cards were so expensive. Football cards were almost like a bargain comparatively. So, you know, Joe Namath, obviously, you know, one of those legends. I also like inscription autos. So this is a Nolan Ryan card. Cool. I actually think, so this is the picture, he's bleeding.
That's like, when he got that line drive to the face and he kept pitching through it. Yeah.
I think it was Bo Jackson, wasn't it? I think it was Bo Jackson that hit the shot that got him.
It could have been Bo. Yeah. No, it could have been Bo.
So he did everything. Like, how many Ks he had. Do you want me to go into like the full scope, or do you want to stop there and?
No, let's go into the full scope, my friend. Okay. I'll interject real quick. I want you to, I want to ask you a question. I remember watching a couple of your videos in the past. I know at one time you were really into the 86 Fleer collect. You're trying to collect 86, a lot of 86 Fleer. I think this was right before or after that big 21 run up that everything went crazy and then came down.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Do you still have that collection, or is that something that has gone?
I do. And so, no, I definitely do have it. Now, I don't have anything wild. I mean, I've got like a Hakeem Olajuwon PSA 8 rookie. I never did get a, you know what? I didn't pull it out. Shoot. I do have an 86 Fleer sticker Jordan. That's a BGS 8.5. That's probably the best card I've got from that set. I've got a Charles Barkley PSA 8 86 Fleer as well. I bought a bunch of like 87 Fleer All-Star PSA 9s and stuff like that. I do have, so what I did was I bought multiples of them. So what had happened was I still have all the kind of the original, like I've got one of each, but then over time I have, like, to raise money for other things, I'll sell off duplicates, you know, of certain cards that I got from like 87 Fleer, 88 Fleer, 86 Fleer. So yeah, I do have quite a bit of that stuff. I didn't pull it out, but yeah, I've still
No, that's
got.
okay. You didn't expect to. I just remembered
Yeah,
that distinctly. That was something that you were trying to put together back then. I was just curious if you still had it. Oh, cool.
Yeah, and those were cards too, going back to when we were kids, that were just like they were way too expensive in my local card shop. So, and now they're pretty reasonable unless you're buying like PSA 10s of those things, you know. I mean, they're fairly reasonable. So, yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good, it's an iconic set, I think. And the 88 and 87, the stickers, I remember going into those. I got a few of those cards. I had a Jordan for a minute. I kind of went in and went out of all that. But yeah, it's a pretty cool set, but there was a lot of, I don't know if it was manipulation, but boy, that market ran and it became difficult to get in. I think the PSA 8 entry point was a great entry point. You're never going to, it's kind of hard to get hurt there. So yeah, that was a smart move.
Yeah, I've got some. And then, you know, just during that time too, I bought in at higher prices to where but it's like, I've never been I would say that most of the cards I've got are between $100 and $500. We're really like $50 to $500. So I've got a lot of cards where, like, from those sets where I paid 80 and it's probably 50 now, or I paid 120 and now it's 80 or something, you know. So yes, they have dropped. But like you said, those are iconic sets, you know, and I'm a long-term holder, you know, for the stuff. So it's kind of like, you know, tomato, like if it drops 10, 20, you know, percent now, I just don't care because I'm looking way down the road.
That's a great place to be, man. You did it right. You really got into it for the right reasons. And you weren't just trying to maximize on an investment mindset. I mean, all of us want our cards to stay, you know, somewhat valuable, but the fact that you're able to kind of get in that level, and it makes it still fun for you now, because now you're not like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You're like, oh, it's okay. I'm liking it. It's fine. I'm glad I have it. They're iconic. There's something I want to have and I want to hold. And so, okay. So you have comic books and you have toys. And video games. We got to walk down that path. So go ahead and walk me into some of your more alternative collectibles.
Sure. I'll just go ahead with the He-Man figure that I had showed you this before we came on. So I had been looking for this. If you know anything about kind of the Masters of the Universe stuff, there's different iterations that they did each year, starting in 1982 or 83. This is the original, hence the yellow little box right there, the original He-Man. So it's the first series, kind of like a first edition book is kind of how I look at it. And a lot of people will think like, but who cares? You know, like they made so many of these in the 80s, but this is series 1. This is going back to the very first one. And then each year they had kind of series 2 and 3. And now they're making them. Now you can get like retro play, and it's the same looking box, but it's the volume 20 of it, you know? So I found this on auction, and I'd been looking for one for a while. They're not easy to come by at all. It's a little bit banged up. But again, this is kind of one of those things from the 80s. It's like Thundercats and He-Man are kind of those, like, you know, and G.I. Joe, Star Wars for some people. I mean, those are kind of the iconic toys from that age. I like the IP on it too. I know that, you know, I wasn't crazy about the new stuff that they did, but that era is always going to be remembered for like these cartoons, these Saturday morning cartoons that they did. So and this is a long-term hold for me. It's kind of like a grail toy for me, if you will.
Yeah.
I've also got, this one is not as well known. So it's Moss Man. And this is also from the 80s. It's in box. My dad was in the Air Force. I've told the story before, and he would come back. He'd be gone for months on end at times. But when he would come back, he would surprise me and hide like these toys in my bed. So I would wake up in the morning and like feel it. And then that's how I knew like he was back home. And I remember distinctly Moss Man was one that's like, I don't remember a lot of those, but I do remember, like, I can see it in my room and everything. Him bringing me the Moss Man guy. And also it's got like it's like the real fur, you know, on these. They just don't make, you know, toys like this anymore. So
they don't do that.
You know, when I found one of those in box, I was like, man, I got to have that. So
the memory behind that, Dustin, is so cool. Like that memory of your father. Like when we talk about collectibles, it's not just our, you know, memories of like watching it on TV or playing with the toy. It's the, you know, it's the attachment to our family or friends or cousins or parents or whatever it may be. It harkens another memory and a core memory that makes it emotional almost. It's a real neat thing. that's why it's really hard to like go, why did you spend this much money? It's like, I can't explain it with words. It's hard to put in words the feeling and the joy it gives me, and why having Mossman, because everybody will look at Mossman and go, that's cool. Or you have some real, you know, maybe knowledgeable people on the product or on He-Man, original He-Man. I'm sure there's a blog somewhere, a forum somewhere, and they'll go, oh gosh, that's from the blah blah blah. But you're just like, no, but Mossman was, I remember that from my dad. Like that's a memory for me that'll always be cherished. And, you know, we're raising our kids as we're doing those things with them. We're doing the same thing. Like I was telling my son with the little Bo Jackson coin from the starting line. He thinks that thing is like worth more than money. He thinks it's the coolest thing. I have it hard to tell him, like, it's just a little coin with Bo's face on it. But it matters to him. And he's probably always going to remember, gosh, dad and his cards and dad and little coin he gave. He'll think about that fondly later. And that's something that we can do for, you know, it's such a neat thing. It's really hard to explain. That's why I think these shows, these conversations are so cool to have, and they're so important to put out there, because, you know, it's a great way to recollect on our childhood and all those wonderful memories we have. And some don't have the greatest of memories, but those are sometimes really nice ones sprinkled in for people, and they can kind of bring them back in a positive way. So, well, thanks for sharing that.
To speak to that too, the psychologists watching are going to be like, wow, this guy's nuts. But part of that, I think too, is my parents got divorced when I was 11. So, you know, this is kind of during that time where this was the outlet. You know, it's like when you look at like these toys, these cards, these video games, this is kind of like all the good things surrounding kind of like a bad event. But, you know, these are the things that help you cope. And these are the things that, you know, that you remember that were good. And look, it's not to take away from, like, there was a bunch of good years of my parents, but that's kind of a, you know, a sour spot that this all makes okay. You know, that's kind of part of the journey.
That's a real interesting, thanks for being transparent about that, I think, and sharing that. It's not easy to share stuff like that. And I think that definitely helps other people, right? It's, you know, people just, no one wants to feel like they're ever alone. And when you don't feel alone in collecting or PCing certain things, if you don't feel alone in your frustrations or pains or your past or things that you struggled with, and you don't want to feel alone in some of the joys that you've had and going, I'm not the only one that feels like that was a big deal. Why was He-Man a big deal? It's a big deal for more than one person. Like, we all have those memories. And so it's you know, I remember getting the F-14 Tomcat from my Uncle Perry when I was a kid, and I was 5 or 6 years old. The Top Gun just came out. He bought it was the big plane, had the parachute, had Tom Cruise, Maverick, and the whole thing. I mean, I've yet to I can't find it to save my life. I got 2 really cool G.I. Joe jets. I have one in still a box and one for my son that he plays with. But that's a memory I'll never forget, that sitting on the top of the bunk bed and him coming in and giving it to me. I mean, yeah, those are really neat memories. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. All right, I'll get off of the heart. Yeah, those
the heartstrings. Yeah.
Comic books. You want to move over to comic
Let's
books?
do it. Comics.
Let's see. I just grabbed a few. I have probably nothing crazy, but I probably have maybe 40 or 50 graded comic books. Oh, and we were talking about, I know people have been talking about Sports Illustrateds recently. I bought my first graded Sports Illustrated. It's the first Hulk cover.
Nice.
And I am not a wrestling guy at all, but if you grew up in the 80s, Hulkamania and the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, like, that was a big part of that. You know, so
you bet.
I was like, that's just a cool cover. I'll pick that up.
Definitely, man. Those the first Sports Illustrated, those are the ones that carry the most value, right? The first cover of any particular. Yeah.
All right. So this is one of my favorites. This is Incredible Hulk #4. It's a CGC 3.5. Wow. And so for comics, they grade it a little bit differently, but it is 1 to 10. This is considered vintage from 1963. So there are no 10s for this book. I don't even know if there's a 9.8. Their scale is like 9.0, 9.2, 4, 6, 8. But I really like these, kind of like vintage sports cards, but these are basically vintage comic books. You know, but Incredible Hulk #1, obviously kind of out of the range for me and where I'd like to be. But this one, you know, it wasn't inexpensive, but it was kind of in the price point where it's like, man, you get to hold kind of one of these like really early Marvel books. And you look at kind of where that's gone, you know, just with all the movies and everything else. And I've always liked Hulk as the kid. Like, I just like the whole storyline behind Hulk. I know Spider-Man is the most popular one, but I really like Hulk's storyline. And when you look at these original books that Stan Lee did and Jack Kirby, it's like a time machine. You know, it's kind of like when you look at, you know, when people show like Honus Wagner Sports Card or 52 Mantle, it's a piece of American history and comics, you know, the old Marvel comics, definitely are a part of that. And then on the DC side, this one's not quite as old, but I have been looking at kind of more of like the golden age, silver age DC stuff. And this is the Joker #1. It's in a 9.6. It's from 1975. So it's not, it's vintagey, I guess. That's almost 50 years ago, 1975. So, but this is his only kind of standalone book. And I just like how, with DC, it's kind of like in sports cards, you're collecting the goats. It's like DC is pretty easy to figure out. The goats are, it's Batman, Superman, and then they have great villains, the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin. So, and the Joker goes back to the 40s, I think, is like the first appearance of the Joker is like the, 1940s.
Right.
So a lot of that stuff I think is really cool. So, and then I've also got, I didn't pull them out, but from the 90s, like, the Simpsons #1 in like a 9.8, which is basically like a PSA 10, Beavis and Butthead #1 comic book in a 9 point, and it's from like 1991, but that's of course just like nostalgic stuff.
Nostalgic, yeah. And Bronze Age, for those who don't understand, there's the comic book, there's ages, there's like there's the golden era, there's bronze, and then there's silver.
Yeah, so golden age is the oldest stuff, and then silver is like that 60s, like the Marvel stuff, that the beginnings of Marvel. 1963 was really when Marvel stuff started. And then bronze age is kind of more of like I don't know when bronze age actually starts, but I would say like 1980 maybe. And then I don't know where comic book people, there's also like modern, ultra modern with comic books too, and I'm not sure exactly how people view that. But yeah, the 80s stuff where you've got like Amazing Spider-Man 300, where like you've got first appearance of Venom, that's considered a bronze age book.
That's a bronze age book, yeah, because there's like those stages where you get the books, and so interesting. Yeah, it's in the 9.8, that's an interesting topic too, because you always look for, was there a 10 anywhere? Like, well, the 9.8 is pretty much a PSA 10. I learned that from Bro Namath and a buddy of mine, Adam, who collects a lot. He's a huge comic book collector. It's all he collects is comics.
Okay,
he's got tons of graded comics. He got into comics, and I got into cards around the same time at 19. Right, we're both in the band together, and we were touring around doing stuff and always playing. And when we were younger, and then we started another band and we're playing some stuff, one-offs in LA and stuff like that. And then pandemic hits and we're no longer playing. And so he did that, I did this, which is kind of interesting. So we both had to fill that need, right? He got headlong into comics, and still to this day, he sends me information like, oh, this is going to go, and this is an important comic. There's a movie coming out. And Bro Namath told me, and I think he's told me in the past as well, that there's somewhere you can go to find out what movies are coming out with different characters and where they make their first appearances in different books to go buy the book, which I think is fascinating. You prospect on comics. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Yeah, it's always the first appearance of a particular character, and people are always, you have the major keys where it's like Hulk 181, first appearance of Wolverine is like a major key, or Amazing Fantasy 15. But it's evolved now for comic book people to where it's like, like the first appearance of, Dark Phoenix, and that's a key, it's broadened out in the same way sports cards have, where it's like, oh, now this card, which was a pretty big card, is now like a monster card, now it's kind of evolved to where, there's just more, I think, people speculating on stuff.
So talk to me about, how big is your collection? Like, how many slabbed cards do you have? How many toys do you have? How many comic books? You said you had 40 or so slabbed comic books. How many, give me a round number of what your collection looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm actually just looking around now so that I can try to figure this out. I mean, I just bought another case that holds up to, I think, like 80 slabs, and I filled it. I probably have anywhere from, this is such like a wide range, but anywhere from 250 to 350 slabs, graded cards. Raw cards, I mean, I probably have a couple hundred raw cards, but I'm really specific with what I'm looking for. And I'm especially now, over the last year, I've been really trying to find numbered stuff that I want to send in for grading that's in good shape. So yeah, I would say, another couple hundred raw cards. As far as toys go, I probably have, 5 to 7 in-box toys. And then I've got, starting lineups. I've got 3 graded starting lineups. Just looking around my office here. I've got about 20 graded video games, 20, 25 graded video games. And it's all like Black Box NES. So it's Excite Bike. It's, you know, Super Mario Brothers. I've also got the original Mario Brothers. If you want, I can just really quickly, I can just grab one just so we can kind
of. Sure, go ahead. Yeah. So
yeah.
while he's grabbing that, the original Nintendo games, they speak to you probably more because that was the first Nintendo, right? The Super Nintendo, but yeah, okay, look at that. How cool is that?
Yeah, so this is graded by WADA. It's a 6.0 and it's complete in box. So the ones that go for crazy money, like a sealed copy of this game that's never been opened, is a 6-figure game, or it's, you know, high 5 figures. It's a big one because, as it says right on the label, let me go back to it. First appearance of Luigi, first game starring Mario. You know, so that's kind of where it's like with comic books, with the rookie card for sports cards, this is kind of like the rookie card for Mario. And for me, you know, I want to collect cool things. I feel really fortunate that I grew up during the time where, you know, all the really cool IP stuff came out, you know, so like if you look back, like Nintendo started up, they're building like Mario Land in Orlando, you know, I mean, like Mario is going in 50 years, there's still going to be Mario stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know,
is that still in the box? Is that like, that's graded a 6? So is that still, that's not sealed, but they inspected the game itself to make sure it was still in good condition? Is that what happens when they grade them?
So what they're doing is they're grading the box, the cartridge, the manual, and then they give an overall grade. So unfortunately, and part of the reason why I was able to get like a fairly good deal on this one is because the box is graded 4.5, not very good. The cartridge 7.5, the manual 7.5, and then overall they gave it a 6. You know, so but it's tough to get, you know, like manuals. It might seem dumb, but like going back to 1985 or whenever this came out, but people just trash the manual, or, you know, it's not like people delicately kept the manuals in great shape.
No one was thinking about that. No way.
The boxes. So there are some nice, you know, and I've thought about too getting kind of another graded copy that's just got a nicer box. You know, the struggle I have with some of this stuff, and this is a whole nother tangent, but you know, it's like you might have heard of this, where they found recently like a case, you know, it was like a storage unit full of like Star Wars action figures that were in the box, like perfect condition from like 1977. You know, so you have, and the same thing could happen with these, where you have like, you know, all of a sudden they find, you know, a KB Toys R Us, you know, know, whatever. You know, so over time, I think like as they either find these or don't find them, they grade more, etc. Then you kind of get a better idea of the market for them. But with these, I'm not in like, these aren't massive price points for me. I'm not spending just, you know, it's not like life-changing money that I'm putting into them. So that's where I feel comfortable. It's like, is it a price point that I feel comfortable with? What's my downside? You know, and that's how I kind of gauge it, you know. But
yeah, I looked at Super Tecmo Bowl. I looked at a graded version of that because I was like, that's one that obviously matters, and it kind of fits in with my Bo Jackson collection. But they're asking so much money. There's only one online. I mean, what I can see anyway. And they were asking for quite a bit. I think it's north of $1,000 for it. And I'm like, geez Louise. And it's fairly decent. I think it's a 9, might be a 9 grade. So what's your best graded video game? Like highest graded video game?
It's probably, highest graded. So I've got a couple of sealed Atari games that are 9.6 and 9.4. One of them is the original Donkey Kong game for Atari.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So, and it's not, you know, I bought it it's a 9.6 sealed, but the thing is though, is that they came in sealed cases. So the reason, like, I paid $500 for that copy, which is it's not inexpensive, but when you think about like, okay, that's a 40-year-old game. It's like the first appearance of Donkey Kong, you know, Atari, like that's a pretty important game, but it's different than Nintendo because yes, they made a lot of Atari games, but there's also people that still have like sealed cases of these. So it's sealed, but they're not as rare as maybe like the Nintendo version that was just sold in a store. It's just the way that it was distributed. So there's nuance with games. I think the tricky part is kind of like what you mentioned is we have all these, you know, we have tens of millions of sports cards that have been graded. There just haven't been very many games graded yet. So like population relative to cards is very low.
Very low.
Well, and even comic books. I mean, like if you're talking about, modern, ultra modern, yeah, you've got some decent numbers there. But even if you're comparing some of these older Bronze Age, Silver Age comic books and the price points, then compare them to, sports cards, it's still relatively inexpensive comparatively. Two very different markets, obviously, different collector base, but there's crossover like us. There is some crossover there. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing where it's like, I'm spending money on this stuff. You're spending money on it. 20 years from now, they're going to, they might be grading other things too. And so, I think that's part of the fun though. It's like, if you're just kind of getting into things at price points you feel comfortable with, and especially something like this, where it's like the originals. Part of the reason why I'm comfortable with this is, yes, it's nostalgic to me, but this is what's hilarious is vintage video games is like that's us. Like, all the people that are like 70 now, they're the ones that grew up with Manals or whatever, and for us, this is like when we're 70, this is, all the kids are gonna be like, that's a video game. They sold it at
yeah. Why? Have you seen? We keep talking about all this. Have you seen the History Channel runs these series like the Titans of America or the Food of America? Have you watched the Toys of America yet? That's they talk about He-Man. Yes. They talk about the Kenner. They don't talk about Starting Line. I think they talk about Starting Line.
Oh, I think they're fascinating. Just how Kenner had like the pressure that Kenner had. Like, we got to get this toy line out by Christmas.
Yeah.
No, those are fascinating. I love those.
And Mattel passing on Star Wars and not wanting to take on that product line, and then Kenner takes it on, and it just, all that stuff is so fascinating to me. I think about He-Man and how the Mattel sort of like, that was their response. I think it was that, or was it response to G.I. Joe? I forget what it was, but yeah, they drew out like watching the evolution of He-Man and how it became He-Man. It was like, I watched it and my wife's like, why is this interesting to you? I'm like, you have no idea. Like, this is so cool. Like, I never knew this. And this was like my childhood right here. All those really cool toys.
The one thing, and just a little side note on that, because I hear a lot of, a pushback on this will be like, well, every generation has their nostalgic thing. That's what you always hear. But my answer to that, though, is, but our generation is different. And I know people are going to be like, okay, yeah, yours is different. But the reason why I believe it's different is because these major IPs, like what we're talking about, Mario Brothers and He-Man, He-Man's a lesser of an IP. But if you think about kind of the commercialization of pop culture stuff in the 80s was really when it really started happening. Like, my dad in the 50s did Rock'em Sock'em Robots. There was no huge IP that was created from there that, there's no characters, Walt Disney created characters in the 30s that carried on. But my point is that Mario Brothers started in the 80s. In 50 years, we'll still be talking about Mario Brothers. Like, that will carry on. So the nostalgic things for us will also be nostalgic things for our kids, because it's the same damn characters. It's just we were around when it all started.
Well, that's the key, though. You're talking about is the longevity, the consistency of that particular character, that brand. Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers, like what you're talking about Orlando, they're building a Super Mario Land. I mean, that's going to be around. That's going to transcend our generations, right? So it depends on what you're picking up. Excite Bike, no, Excite Bike's going to matter to you and I because we remember playing it in our friend's house, or home. We're going to remember Excite Bike because of that. But Mario will have a lasting impact. So you talk about the Simpsons, you talk about Beavis, but those are things that are going to have like some cultural impact. So let's just pretend for a second you got to exit your home real quickly. And this is going to be hard for you because you have so many things.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to answer this question, Dustin. I have no clue how you're going to answer this question. I have no clue. Okay, you got to leave quickly. Your family is safe. They're fine. They're out. So obviously your animals, everybody, all the important things. Now you got to grab some stuff out of that office. What are you taking with you? You have to be able to hold it in your hands, and you can't carry some kind of a case. It's got to be stuff you can take. I mean, you can. I don't care. You tell me how big your arms are, how big your hands. How many things you can run up the stairs carrying out? What are you taking with you?
Yeah. Now I'm going to answer the question, but the reality is I probably go down in flames because I can't make a decision. And that's the real.
So Dustin doesn't make it out of the house because he can't make his mind up.
That's probably what actually happens. But
you're the only person who has said that, which is so funny because. Here you go, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, the truest collector of collectors we've ever had on the show. He's going to go down with the ship.
I've got a few things, but yeah, it would be really hard. It would be really hard. And okay, so let me.
Isn't it hard to think about it? Like, if you really put yourself in that moment, you got to go, and you're obviously not going to go down with the ship. You got to go. What do you grab? Like, what are you going to
Yeah.
take?
All right. So this is, I'll just tell the story with each one. I've got a handful of things here. So this is a card. This is 100 Years Breeze Flawless. It's a Panini black box, 1 of 1. And so this is an interesting one. I was at the National, not this past one, but the year before. And this was after the pandemic. So this is when everyone is finally getting to a national, and especially a lot of the new people that got into the hobby or got back in. This was like, oh man, we're all going to get to meet each other and all that stuff. So one of my buddies, actually another YouTube channel, Flipping Steve, was walking around this massive trade night and saw this card. And so I was able to make a deal with the guy, actually traded a Baker Mayfield autograph, which at the time I was like, man, this is great. Nice. But then after like last night's game, then I'm like, damn, actually, maybe it's not so great. I'm kidding.
I think you're still great.
But so this is a 1 of 1. But it's one of those that Panini does where, so this card exists also like numbered out of 5, numbered out of 10. But then at each national, you can, I think instead of redemptions, or there's some sort of a program that you enter to be able to trade in to get one of these cards. And so this guy had it. He's not a Breeze fan. And so I was like, man, I'm a huge Saints fan. I'd love to be able to trade into it. So we made a deal happen. And so this one's special to me because it's probably the nicest, autograph I have. And then it's flawless, which is cool. And then also just the memories from that first national. I'm like a big nostalgia guy. I know 20 years from now, I'll look back and be like, man, that's when that first time I went to a national, and maybe I'm 20 years in and I've been going to everyone since, but that was the first national I've ever been to. It was post-pandemic. I got to meet all these people I met online. So and my wife came with me, and actually thank God too, because, and I'm not trying to sound, braggy or whatever, but that was the first time that she had seen, well, and I had too. I went kind of in public, people walking up and being like, hey, I really like your show, or I really like what you're doing. And it was just nonstop throughout that show. And I'm glad that she got to see it, because then it was kind of like, okay, you're
legitimized it for you a little bit.
Yeah, it did. And especially because I can tell her like, oh, people know me. And she'd be like, okay, whatever,
whatever.
So it's like, yes, like it was, she actually got to see. So that was good. So I think just the memory behind that. And so that's definitely, I don't want to say it's my favorite Breeze card, but it's top 2 for sure. This is a card that I bought when I first got back into the hobby back in 2018. It's a PSA 3 Jim Brown rookie card, and I got it for less than $200. I think it was actually $200 with tax and everything, or shipping or whatever. And it's not a crazy expensive card now, but I'm just glad that I was able to get into it as just a big football guy. This is one of my better vintage cards for sure. So the old Jimmy Brown,
Jimmy Brown in the purple slab mags. You like slab mags?
I do. Yeah. They sent me some product just to check out. And so I did kind of a sponsored video on my channel, just sharing what they've got. I love this product. So I am trying to work out a deal with them to do more stuff. Slab mags.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I have my whole collection. I think I spent about $700 on slab mags. I bought ones for all of I got like 40 or 50 cards that I have in my PPC. And I bought slab bags for all of them. They're just so awesome. Love that.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. And it's like, you don't have to worry you accidentally drop it or whatever, or,
it's so hefty. I mean, that's a cool product.
It really is. This is one that I picked up randomly. So I was kind of looking, and this kind of falls into the Hall of Fame auto type stuff. And I'm not a big baseball card guy, but I was looking for a Willie Mays autograph. And this one was interesting because it's from the early 2000s. It's a PSA 7. And so it's like, okay. But then I looked up and I just did more research on this card, and it was a redemption. There's believed to be maybe like 50 or 60 of them, but this is the highest graded copy. The PSA 7.
How cool is that?
One. So I was just like, man, that's just a really cool card. It also wasn't crazy expensive either. I just kind of hit the buy it now and so pick that up. But I don't have a lot of amazing baseball stuff, and that was like, obviously he's a legend.
Yeah,
so I wanted to
pick it up.
This one, not a super rare card. It is the 2018 Luka Silver Prism. And this is the only basketball player that I'm really like. He's the prospect guy that I'm rooting for. He's kind of the newcomer. A lot of guys say they like Giannis, or they've got, different players that they're really into. For me, it's Luka. So this card at the height of the pandemic stuff was like $8,500. I got it at this past national here for $1,750.
Nice.
And, honestly, like if it goes down to 1,000, I'd buy another one. You know, I'd like to maybe even have a few of them just to have, you know, long-term in case it does kind of bounce back down the road. But I just like the picture, the step back 3. You know, I'd love to have, I've got the, you know, in my background, one of my paintings is the blue version that's numbered out of 199.
Yeah.
One day, maybe one day, you know, I'll have to make a few more bucks to see if we can get into that. But I just really like this 2018 design too. You know,
it's iconic. It's an iconic card. It almost distinguishes, and it's identifiable with this whole time period of getting back into the hobby, 1920, 21. I mean, that Luca Silver Prism, like that, and the Zion, that, and I don't know if there's maybe a Zion, but I'd say the Luca that's the card you think of when you think about the hobby these last few years.
Yeah, and I like that too, because that's really the last year, in my opinion. Now, it's not to have any sort of a knock on 2019 or 20 products for people, or 21 products for people that have those. But for me, 2018, as far as new products go, is I just didn't think print runs went wild after. I'm not saying that 2018 wasn't printed a lot, but once we get into Jaw and Zion and we get kind of beyond, there's just a lot more of that stuff out there. So that's why I think 2018 is kind of where I cut it to where I was like, you know, that's where, and so, yeah. And it just so happened that that's Luca's rookie year. So we're good. We are good.
You're good. You're good. You got Luca's rookie year. You can kind of cut it off there. That's your modern prospecting game right there. Okay.
That's my prospect. Yep. All right. I'm going to throw a curveball here. I've talked about this on my channel a little bit, and I've gotten a lot of pushback like, Dustin, you're an idiot, but whatever. All right. So this is a Stranger Things card, friends. So this is Matt and Ross Duffer. These are the twins that they created Stranger Things for Netflix.
Cool.
So this kind of goes back to, you know, the family. All my kids watch this outside of my youngest son. He's not allowed to watch it. He's 7. So, you know, this is a thing where my family doesn't really care about any of this stuff except for the Stranger Things cards. And now I've built up a pretty nice collection of Stranger Things autos. That's really kind of the big chase. There's other chase cards as well, but I've probably got 60 or 70 auto cards. You know, and this one, the thing I like about Stranger Things is it started in 2018. There's not many sets, obviously, because it's a TV show. So you've got 2018 tops, 19 and 20. And now you've got Zero Cool at the National had the gigantic, you know, the tower, and they were giving out promo cards for season 4 cards that they did kind of a little mini release here, a limited release recently, but then they're going to have a full release. But my main point is there's not 1,000 sets, you know, so like with Marvel cards, they've been making those for 40 years. You know, there's a large variety of Marvel cards out there. Stranger Things, though, there's really not that much stuff. So the chase is really kind of fun. Like this one is numbered out of 10. The other thing I like is on the hobby boxes. So this came out of series 2. Hold on. Let me make sure I don't break everything on my. So this is a series 2 hobby box. And then on the packs, it won't say it on the hobby box, but on the packs, it'll give you pack odds, you know? So like this dual auto is like 1 out of like 10,000 packs. You know, it's really difficult to find. And they've got them for, you know, all the different characters. This is series 1, but this is Dustin it's also got like a patch. This is like a patch auto, an RPA, if you will. It's numbered out of 10, but you know, they're scarce, you know. And the other thing, the one thing that's nice too, is I can get the best Stranger Things cards for, a fraction of what the best sports cards are, you know? So if you're just kind of comparing, like, how far are your dollars going? And granted, I understand that pop culture cards aren't sports cards, different markets and all that, but it is kind of a cool thing. You know, when I got this one the other day, this is the Steve Harrington auto.
Oh, nice.
Both my daughters have huge crushes on Steve Harrington in the show. So you see there the Topps sticker. It was a redemption, so it's numbered out of 50, but it's from 2018, so they're all expired now. So it's like if you get the redemption, it's useless, you know. So there's a lot of scarcity to them. So it's just kind of a matter, like at the price points, I'm like, if these ever catch on to where they get mega popular, there's just not much of it out there. It's not like a Michael Jordan. I know that this is going to sound crazy, but like Michael Jordan autographs are not that uncommon. He actually signed a lot of cards. If you go back in time, you know, Kobe autos, there's quite a few Kobe autos out there. So now granted, it's not the same market, obviously, but there's just very like David Harper on the show, Harbor or whatever. He's got like 20 cards that are signed, period. 20 different cards. So,
well, it fits the market. I mean, you got to think about the market for that product. Stranger Things has a pretty decent following. So I think, and that following, I think will age well. It's a very interesting show, and it kind of ties into the whole 80s thing for me when I watch it. It's like,
you're seeing a pattern with me. You're seeing a pattern.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm with you, man. I when I watch your show, I'm like, this guy and I would get along really well. We have a lot of the same interests. But you have that market, and I think that the market will grow, and over time you go, okay, there's a built-in scarcity, but it also fits the market, right? I mean, if they were producing as much Stranger Things cards as they were producing 2021 Prism basketball, right. I mean, you just wouldn't work because there'd just be way too much supply, but that supply is all capped now. So it kind of creates a true scarcity for the product, when I feel like the market for that show is gonna, everybody knows what the show is, and I think people will find it later too. That happens. So I think you might have an opportunity there if you're in it in the right price to, if you're collecting it to keep it, it's one thing, but if you have a couple extra to sell, you never know. So, well,
that's what I've tried to do, because the price points are right to where I've just tried to get duplicates of things to where the goal is kind of sell off to cover the cost basis. So it's like, if I've spent $10,000 on this particular segment, and if it rises in price or whatever, and if I can sell off duplicates to kind of get my, it's almost like the free collection. Yeah, it's like you're getting your cost basis back. It's like your free collection essentially. Then that would be great. That's kind of the goal, and then that way I can still keep stuff for long term. And hey, if they do a Stranger Things reunion in 20 years, I've got the original cards, or whatever.
Well, I will tell you, I mean, that's a great strategy. I don't know how you're doing with it. I wouldn't be able to do it. I have yet to be able to do it. I keep track of every dime I've spent. I know what I've sold. I know what I've bought. And I still have I have to put it into an ROI format. I have to go, this is how much I spent based on how much I sold. And here's what my current value is, thanks to Card Ladder. And I use some alt values too. To find out where my, more obscure cards are valued. And it's just kind of a crapshoot anyway. But either way, I go, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my ROI. My ROI is still like 27, 28%. So still not better than the stock market would have produced for me in the last 2 or 3 years. But, and then we all think, well, store value is probably really what it is. It's not so much an investment. It's a store of value. And you want the store value to be there. You want it to continue to have a value. So, great stuff. Dustin, thank you so much for jumping on the show today. I feel like we can do like 3 hours, and we can do like 4 different shows with the amount of stuff.
Hey, if you want to do a part 2 at some point,
we will probably have to, because there are I want to dive into so many different topics with you, that the tangents that we can dig and go down the rabbit holes that I know other people would enjoy, because this is what this show is for. It's for going down the rabbit hole and the story behind the different products lines. I mean, comic books, video games, figurines, gosh, it goes on and on. Like I was just telling, I'll mention it on the show now that we're talking about it, but I just spent a good amount of money on not a good amount of money. I just spent some money on a bunch of starting lineup Ken Griffey Jr. and Bo Jackson. And I was feeling really sheepish about it the past few days until I jump on and start talking to Dustin. Dustin's like, oh brother, you're fine. These are the great, I have them graded. They're so great. And I'm like, okay, all right, maybe it's all right. So this is so many things.
This is our generation's antiques. I think about like my parents used to go antique shopping and be like, gosh, Dad, this is so boring. Like we're looking at an antique trunk. When I'm 50 or whatever, we're looking at this stuff, my kids are gonna be like, man, this stuff is actually kind of cool. It's like I think that's gonna be our antique shopping, is this stuff.
I mean, I got this Ken Griffey. I'll tell you, I get this Ken Griffey Jr. It's like this tall. You open up the thing, he's like a doll. When you look at it on an eBay, I thought it was like this little thing, and it's like this massive thing. It was like $10, and I'm like, I can't. I'm just gonna give it to my son to have now. I mean, he'll keep it in the box because he's smart. I'm teaching him how to preserve things. There's some he can take out and some he keeps, but I'm like, these are insane. Like some of these are so well done. Like, it's amazing that, you get into the 80s, you talk about the quality of some of these toys. We could talk about toys, cards, really good stuff. Dustin, thank you so much for joining the Collectors Series PC Journey. And everybody go out and follow Sports. Give a shout out your channel. Let's get some followers there.
Sure. Yeah. The Sportscard Dad on YouTube. And then on IG, it's at Sportscard Dad. And I'm on Twitter too, the Sportscard Dad.
Go follow Dustin. He's got terrific content, authentic. This is the guy you get every step of the way. He's the same guy. It's really fun. It's been consistent. I'd argue you've been as consistent. Well, you've put out videos almost every day, just like our buddies Cage and Andrew here and Luca Nation Network. Yeah. But thanks for joining us and helping, like, walking us through your collection, showing us some really cool stuff and some great stories. And we'll do this again soon. So definitely we'll hook up for sure. Again, friends, thanks for being a part. Thanks for tuning in. Comments below. Let us know if there's anything you'd like to talk about. Gosh, we covered a lot, but if there's more, let us know. Hit the like button. Go subscribe. Luca Tiger Braun podcast. Follow me at PC with DPZ. Until next time, happy collecting.
Thanks, guys.
And then we'll end it. Oh, I'm on 3 different screens here.